Leningrad, January 1943. In a large, half-empty apartment where nothing of its former luxury remained, a thin, haggard woman sat at the headboard of an iron bed. In the bed, covered up to their chins, lay two children. Their pale, thin faces spoke without words of hunger. Their mother saw and felt that her children were leaving. Despair and pain overwhelmed her whole being. Damn war! The famine in the city was terrible, families were dying. They held on as long as there was something to sell or barter. Simple pleasures in the form of groats and a piece of bread caused delight. Of the large family, there were 3 of them left, a mother and 2 children. The woman kissed the children affectionately and took out a pocket watch from her hiding place. An expensive silver watch, the only valuable thing that could save them. But she wasn't going to part with it. It was her last hope. She took a long look at the lid of the watch, decorated with an intricate drawing in which secret words were intertwined. She had been offered not only a great deal of money for this piece, but even to be taken out of town. No, she couldn't. Opening the lid, the woman whispered the words embossed on the lid. She had no regrets, only that her children should live. The hands of the clock shuddered faintly and went backwards. Round and round the clock went backwards against all laws. Suddenly they stopped, and for a few moments, nothing happened. "Mom?" The woman turned around and gave a fake smile. They would live. Our days. Ksyusha was in a hurry. Her hand was pulled away by a heavy grocery bag. At her grandmother's request, she bought groceries and carried them to her. And then she was going to class. Underfoot icy porridge and had to walk slowly to avoid falling. Ahead showed a large 3-story house surrounded by a fence. The facade of the building was hidden behind trees. Zania could, with closed eyes, describe the facade, porch, interior decoration of the house. In this house the girl lived until she was 18 years old, and then moved to an apartment given by her grandmother. Grandmother, Katerina Pavlovna, was a real society lady, and nothing could change this. Ksyusha carried groceries to her because her grandmother didn't trust delivery. Her housekeeper was away at the funeral. Katerina Pavlovna could not eat breakfast without a certain kind of cheese, fresh cream, and cottage cheese, and for dinner she wanted fish. So the girl had rushed to the market and the store from early morning, and now she was in a hurry to bring the purchases to her grandmother. They were very close to their grandmother from early childhood. Ksyusha was left without parents early. Her grandmother brought her up on her own. The house was built by her great-grandfather. The building was now considered a historical monument. Ksyusha took out of her bag the key to the gate. The wind came up, which almost knocked down. Bags in the snow did not want to put, but it was not convenient to open. Suddenly, the foot awkwardly drove on the ice. The handle of the bag burst and Ksyusha, trying to keep her balance, grabbed the bars of the fence. She still did not manage to hold on, fell into the snowy mush, with the bag flew off to one side, and the products scattered on the sidewalk. "How did you do that?" sounded nearby voice. Ksyusha turned around. She extended her hand to a young man of pleasant appearance. "Come on, slowly get up. Nothing broken? Or so you can break the neck of the femur. Thank you." The girl grunted, getting up and shaking herself off. "Anton," introduced himself to the man. "Ksyusha." Anton quickly gathered the food in bags, tied the handles, and gave Ksyusha. For a minute the girl hesitated as if thinking about what she should do, but then still invited him into the house. "Zania, I'm in the kitchen!" Grandma's voice rang out as soon as they crossed the threshold. "Let's go, you can hang your jacket in the closet. Here, wipe your shoes." Grandma doesn't like it when guests are forced to wear slippers. Zania smiled, not bravely. They went into the kitchen, a large bright room equipped with modern appliances and various gadgets. Here at the window stood a small round table, where grandmother usually drank coffee in the morning. From the window in summer and spring there was a beautiful view of the blossoming garden and flower beds, but now the sight was dull. "Grandma, I'm not alone. A young man helped me when I almost broke my neck at the gate." "There again there is snowed in," said Zania. "Anton, this is my grandmother, Katerina Pavlovna. Very nice." Then they drank tea. Ksyusha fussed in the kitchen, and the mistress of the house made small talk. Anton liked the old woman, and she invited him to Sunday dinner. The tradition of organizing a big dinner on Sundays was many years old. It had been started by Katerina Pavlovna's father, and had rarely been broken since then. This time there were not many guests planned, except for a new acquaintance of Ksyusha, an old friend of the hostess, the owner of the dental clinic. Mikhail Stepanovich was invited to dinner. Uncle Misha, as he was called in childhood Zania, always appeared in their house with gifts and flowers. Tall, imposing, in an expensive suit, he gave the impression of a solid man. however he was. Katerina Pavlovna adored these evenings also for the opportunity to dress up and have fun. "You have many hours in the house," Anton remarked. "Yes, it's a family hobby," Katerina explained. "My grandfather started collecting clocks, and my father could even fix them." "Katerina Pavlovna has some interesting specimens," said the old doctor. "Yes, I'll show you later and tell you a wonderful story," replied the woman calmly. "Grandma, maybe not," beggingly looked at her grandmother Ksyusha. Anton thought that the girl did not want to hear once again a tale about the past, and he became really interested. After dinner, everyone gathered in the living room by the fireplace, men with glasses of whiskey, the mistress of the house with a glass of wine, Ksyusha with a cup of tea. Katerina Pavlovna looked carefully at those present, and with a slight smile took out a velvet pouch from a box on the mantelpiece. The pouch contained an antique silver pocket watch. "Oh, and I haven't seen it," marveled the doctor. "I have hardly ever shown them to anyone or told anyone about them. I won't have long to tell the story to you, or else I will go away taking the secret to the grave," grinned the old woman. "Grandma, but what are you?" exclaimed Zania. Legend of the clock. Great-great-grandfather Ivan did not want to be poor. But in those days, even if you are smart, but poor, to break through was very difficult, almost impossible. Ivan took any job that was offered. He managed to get an education and got a job as a bookkeeper. He had no family at that time and could easily change his place of residence. One day Ivan was returning from a neighboring village late at night. He had a lift to a fork in the road, and then he had to walk several kilometers. Suddenly it started raining, which quickly turned into a downpour. It was impossible to walk, his feet were stuck in the mud, the water covered his eyes, and there was nowhere to hide. Vanya didn't know how long he had been walking like that. He was tired and cold. Suddenly he saw a tiny farm, in the house of which a light was shining. He rejoiced and hurried there. As soon as he knocked on the door, it opened. Before him stood a friendly old woman, and behind her back loomed a girl. They sheltered him, gave him shelter and a hot meal. The food in the warm room made him swelter, and he was laid down on a cot. He woke up in the middle of the night to the creaking of doors. He saw his grandmother rushing outside with a box. He got curious and followed her, peeping. The woman reached the crossroads. The rain had stopped. She dug a hole in the middle and put the box in it. The grandmother muttered something, got up from her knees and left without turning around. Ivan wanted very much to know what was in the box. As soon as the grandmother left, he quickly ran to the place where she was digging. He didn't have a shovel, but he found a fragment of stone lying on the roadside. With trembling hands, he opened the box. In his heart, he hoped that the grandmother was hiding money or valuables. At the bottom of the small box was a pocket watch. Yes, it was obvious that they were silver and valuable, but not gold, diamonds. Without hesitation, he slipped them into his pocket and buried the box back up. He quickly returned to the house and quietly lay down on the bed. In the morning, his grandmother fed him scrambled eggs with lard, looking at him slyly and with a kind of echidnost. Ivan felt uncomfortable and, thanking her for her shelter, tried to leave the farm as quickly as possible. In the light of day, he could not even find the place where he had been at night. When he moved away from the house, he took out his watch and admired it a little. From that moment, Ivan's life changed dramatically. Very quickly he became rich, literally made money out of thin air. People around him only marveled at where he suddenly had a commercial spirit. Soon he married a girl from a noble but poor family. Daria was a good wife and then a mother. Happiness and wealth and honor lasted for years. One day a beggar knocked at their house. Ivan recognized her at once. It was the same grandmother. Sometimes he had nightmares about her, and it took him a long time to come to his senses after such dreams. Ivan knew that sooner or later he would have to answer for his deed. "What do you want?" Ivan asked her rudely as soon as the old woman crossed the threshold. "Me? Nothing. You've already given all you can," the old woman laughed nastily. "Then why did you come?" He stared at the visitor in bewilderment. He thought she would ask for money. "Years have passed. Consider your conscience awake," the old woman grinned. "You don't know who I am, do you?" Ivan shrugged his shoulders. He didn't know her and didn't want to know, and he wanted her to go away. "This clock is cursed. It has served my family for many years. Or we've been their slaves, more like it. They give power, wealth, but they take away what's most precious. Children. Once they stop suddenly, it means the child will soon die. No more than 2 children survived in a family, no matter how they were cherished. It's the devil's toy. You can't give or give it away, you can't even lose it, only steal it. We sold our souls for coins and we all burn in hell. The woman was almost screaming, and Ivan couldn't utter a word out of horror. I was left alone with my daughter. I was tired of funerals and wakes. I had 7 children, there was only 1 child left, so I started looking for a solution, and I learned a lot. This watch is both a gift and a curse. Do you know how long I've waited for someone like you? Greedy, unscrupulous, young. I knew for sure you wouldn't resist, you'd steal. It worked. I got rid of the curse. My daughter has already given me grandchildren. My family is safe now. Get out, was all Ivan could say when the terrible truth came to him. Oh yes, and lastly, I'll tell you the secret of this clock. Only once you can make your most cherished wish by reading the spell on the lid of the clock. It will go backwards, counting down your years. The wish will come true, and you'll have 5 years to live. That's the secret. The grandmother laughed. Her laughter was like the cawing of a crow. Get out of here! Ivan broke down into a shout. His servant knocked on the door. The woman was forced out of the house. Ivan locked himself in his study. It was just as his grandmother had said. He had gotten rich suddenly, had 5 children, 1 died as an infant, so only 1 would survive. The man was so horrified and sad that he howled with despair. He did nothing. Either he didn't have the guts or he couldn't part with his wealth. As a result, only his son survived to adulthood, 1 of 5. Watches were passed from generation to generation. Few people thought about their history and were interested in it. All of Ivan's letters and notes were also passed down. The family history was not hidden, but was taken for a fairy tale. By the way, the family gradually degenerated because only 1 child survived. This legend was passed down in the family. Before the revolution, our family was rich and respected. My grandfather, like an animal, smelled trouble and hid treasures in different places. He hid his watch too. Of all the children, only my mother survived. She loved us very much. That winter in Leningrad, my mother used the clock. She made a wish and died exactly 5 years later. She gave me the chest with the clock and the records. I was already grown up then. If it hadn't been for my mom, we both would have died then, Katerina Pavlovna told me. Unfortunately, my brother didn't live to adulthood. Do you believe that? I believe it. I can't help but believe it. There are many miracles and horrors in the world, smiled the old woman. And you kept the watch for so many years? Did you have 1 child too? The young man asked curiously. I had 3 children, only my son lived to adulthood. Now I have only a granddaughter, and maybe the great-grandchildren will soon go, sighed the woman. Pity them. The curse is working. We live in the 21st century and you talk about the curse. The young man couldn't stand it and laughed. Anton, stop it! Sharply precipitated the manzanilla. Yes, dear, an interesting story. But the thing is undoubtedly valuable, said the doctor. Time is late, I'll go home. Tomorrow a lot of things to do. I think I'll go home. Thank you for a wonderful evening. Dinner was excellent, Anton said gallantly. Fine, at the same time see my granddaughter off, replied the woman. She doesn't live in this house. Soon all 3 of them left Katerina Pavlovna's hospitable house. The doctor was waiting for a car. He offered to give Ksyusha and Anton a ride. The young people refused and called a cab. Anton escorted the girl to the apartment and went to his home. The thought of the clock did not give him rest, although before he was not interested in ticking mechanisms. That night Anton was not the only one who tossed and turned without sleep. Katerina Pavlovna, having seen off the guests, took a shower and went to bed, and as usual, her thoughts turned to her granddaughter. Ksyusha grandmother not just loved, she was ready for anything as long as the girl was good. Of course, the girl in the future will inherit a huge fortune, which will be enough for many years, but at the same time will become the mistress of the clock. No, the financial side of the old woman did not care. But the loneliness and the future of her granddaughter was even very disturbing. Since that evening, Anton began to visit the house often, made friends with the mistress of the house and her housekeeper. Zania for some reason did not believe the man. Something did not give her peace. With Katerina Pavlovna, Anton got along splendidly. They often stayed up late talking. The old woman told him a lot about the family's past, once again told him the legend of the curse. "But they give you money and power!" Anton once exclaimed, after listening to stories about watches for the umpteenth time. "You just don't know what poverty is." "You're right, I don't," shook her head. "But I know what it is to live in fear and despair, afraid for your loved ones. When you have money, many problems are easily solved," he objected. "You are wrong. Not everything is solved with money," the hostess objected softly. "Not everything is measured by wealth. You and I live in different worlds, Anton replied calmly. Katerina Pavlovna only remained silent, thinking of her own. In her office for a long time lay a thin folder, where all the data about Anton. She had a habit of checking new acquaintances, and on old friends she had dirt. The woman kept the data, but in case she could use it. Man to man is a wolf, she said to her granddaughter when she was a little girl. But this truth Ksyusha remembered well. After Anton's departure, the old woman took out a dossier. From this data it followed that Anton most of his life was poor, all the money spent on clothes and housing. He tried to eat at guests, where he was often invited. He worked at a low-paying job with no special prospects. All he really had was a great upbringing, manners, pleasant appearance, and charisma. But Anton's ambitions were overflowing. This data satisfied the old woman. It was only a matter of time. One February evening, there was a real snowstorm outside the window. That day, Anton and Ksyusha were visiting Katerina Pavlovna. Cabs initially took orders, but the car simply could not get through. By nightfall, the cab dispatchers stopped picking up the phone. Anton and Zania had nothing else to do but to stay the night at Katerina Pavlovna's house. Ksyusha went to sleep in her old bedroom and Anton was assigned a room next to the library. After a couple of hours the house was quiet, interrupted only by the howling of the wind in the chimney. A dark silhouette flashed for a moment in the corridor, and there was a quiet creak of doors. He was in a hurry. Time was short. He could be caught at any moment. It took him a little over 10 minutes to find what he needed. He was driven by a sense of danger and